Hello, my name is Ricardo Lau, and this is my final project for my class. I have decided to speak about the Panama Papers. The main reason I decided to speak about the Panama Papers it's because many people have an idea of what is this about, but not everyone knows the details of it. So I thought it was a good idea to speak about the Panama Papers. So let's start by let's start by clarifying what is the Panama Papers. It was a leak of more than 11.5 documents stolen in 2015 from the servers of the firm Mossack Fonseca, a Panamanian law firm dedicated mainly to the management of offshore companies. This information was leaked by an unidentified source to a German newspaper in which heads of state and governments, world political leaders were exposed, and all their finances were exposed for many things like the tax evasion, their assets, and the profits that they were making for their business. So now I want to clarify the definition of an offshore account. To act within the law, an offshore account must meet certain conditions. First, the directors of the company would not have their domiciles in the country of the registered office. The company will not be able to carry out commercial activities in this country and will not use local labor. On the other hand, it is allowed to have a representative of the company on the site. The society will not be able to use the economy of the host countries, in particular in terms of investment, subsidies, and bank transfers. Another point I'd like to clarify is that this was totally legal and constitutional in Panama. So, why is this important? It is important because the firm currently appears in well-known cases of corruption linked to personalities such as Argentine President Nestor Kirchner and Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, or Brazil's Prime Minister Dilma Rousseff. On the other side of the scale, the name of Mossack Fonseca was totally discredited. Likewise, the Panamanian state, with respect to its relationship with international, through this work we will be analyzing in depth the causes, consequences, and because it was an error on the part of the media of communication to use the name of Panama for acts of corruption that did not involve an entire country. So, why is this an ethical problem instead of another type of problem? While it is true the activity of the firm is not illegal in the strict sense, we cannot exempt the company from illicit activities that occurred in it. As experts in depth of the subject knew that these cases could occur. On the other hand, many of their clients perform perfectly lawful activities. But there are others who have used the servers of the Panamanian firm for darker purposes, such as evading and laundering capital, and it is here where we want to highlight the ethical problem of this company in set with your customers. So, what company are you using? Signatures of lawyers Mossack Fonseca. So now let's analyze what really happened. Those involved contracted with the law firm Mossack Fonseca, consultants for companies, services consisting of funding and establishing companies registered in tax havens in such a way that they fulfill the primary objective of hiding the identity of the owners. So, what interested parties were affected? The Panama Papers have revealed that among Mossack Fonseca clients, there are 143 politicians, their relatives or associates, Among those politicians, there are already 12 well-known government presidents like Vladimir Putin. Of course, the Mossack Fonseca firm, such as lawyers Georgian Mossack and Ramon Fonseca Mora. So, why was this a problem? The problem, to begin with, is that most of the time Mossack Fonseca was contacted by an intermediary acting on behalf of the beneficiary of the offshore company. Knowing those beneficiaries is impossible without a court order. So, how did the company respond? And I quote, "Until recently, there was no need to end customer. It was not necessary. For example, before you sold a company to a bank in Switzerland, and you could not give us the client's name for confidentiality issues. Now we have a limited obligation that it is that we must know the name of the intermediary and know that they do have the name of the final beneficiary," explained Fonseca. "We make legal vehicles, corporations, foundations, and trust, and sell them mainly to intermediaries such as banks, fiduciaries, accountants, and lawyers. Unfortunately, in the legal papers, the name that it comes out, it's ours. And if something happens, the first one they are going to look for is the lawyer who made the society," he says. So, was this an ethical response? Regarding whether or not the answer given by the lawyer was ethically, I could say that this is left to the discretion of each person. Given that these professionals in that area and so, what is the ethical response? Regarding whether or not the answer given by the lawyer was ethical, I could say that this is left to the discretion of each one. Given that these are professionals in the area, and as they mentioned, I already knew of what was coming. The lawyer Mossack, while it is true that his signature was dedicated to offshore companies, where Panama was fully constitutional and legal, they could clinch to the fact that the law protected the beneficiary and it was impossible for them to know where the money was coming from. However, as mentioned, they are professionals and experts, and in this type of cases, and they should have known that this was something that could happen. And to get rid of this is where I personally consider it is unethical and beneficial for this company. So now I would like to talk about how did the interested parties responded to the action. Most of these involved did not want to give statements because they are important figures in the field of politics, economics, arts, but many of the accusants are the following. Sigmundur David Gunnlaugsson, the Icelandic Prime Minister, and his wife used an offshore firm, Wintris Incorporated, to hide millions of dollars in investment in 3 large banks during the financial crisis. The implicated head of the Icelandic executive in mid-2013 has denied any bad practice at all. Mauricio Macri, the Argentine president, was part, along with his father and one of his brothers, of the boards of directors of an offshore company based in the Bahamas called Flag Trending. The firm was active until 2009, when Macri was head of the government of Buenos Aires. The president has stepped out of the information to ensure he never participated in the capital of Flag Trending. Next, Salman bin Abdulaziz, the king of Saudi Arabia, used a tax-domiciled company in the British Virgin Islands, a territory that Spain is listed as a tax haven, to build two luxury home mortgages in central London. In the documentation, also appears as a user of a yacht registered in the British Overseas Territory. Now, the famous football player Leo Messi, the Football Club Barcelona player, used an Uruguayan dispatch to take over a Panamanian company with which they would have built their image rights behind the back of the tax agency. Since July 13, 2013, one day after the prosecutor's office filed a complaint against the footballer of coerced fraud. So, do you agree with what the company did? Personally, I do not agree, as the firm could expect some events like this to happen, taking into account that it is fully constitutional to set up or conduct offshore companies in Panama. It puts. So, do you agree with what the company did? Personally, I do not agree, as the firm could expect some events like this to happen, taking into account that this is fully constitutional to set up or conduct offshore companies in Panama. It put at risk the name of an entire country, accepting beneficiaries like this with sums of millions of dollars, whose source was not probable or confirmable. On the other hand, as a Panamanian, I am very concerned about the vision of this case internationally because, as we mentioned in the introduction, Panama Papers was just a name given by the media, twisting the story and involving to a whole country that was not to blame, obviously. If this were not the case, then there would not be any large law firms in Panama that would solely and exclusively dedicate themselves to this issue. Thank you very much for hearing me out. Bye bye.